Hi, this is Wade, and this is World IBD Day 2019, and I want to talk about what not to say to an IBD patient. Basically explain things that I've been told over the years, and kind of give you what a creative response could be to that. So let's get started. Alright, so the first one that I hear a lot is there are worse things out there than Crohn's disease. So basically, people always tell you, oh, you should be so lucky that you don't have X, Y, and Z. We already know that, but we don't need you to remind us of that. So you may say, there are worse things out there than this, but what's even worse is having you tell us that there's something out there that's worse than it, because we already know. Okay? Next one that I've been told a lot is, you're so lucky you don't have to go to the gym or work out. So basically you're judging again by my outer physique, or in this case, lack thereof. If I'm so thin, that implies that I don't need to work out, but in reality, just because I'm thin does not mean I'm in shape. So actually, that's false. The next thing was when I was in college. I had this one girl, I'll never forget it. She didn't know I had Crohn's, but I had to tell her. I said, she was like, oh, you have Crohn's? I just thought you were anorexic. And that's one of those things that have always stuck with me because, she pretty much prejudged me for having an eating disorder based upon my weight. People don't understand, like, when you make fun of, like, our outer exterior, especially our weight that we cannot control, that is very, very offensive to us because we struggle with it so much as it is. So you pointing it out, whether we gained so much weight or we've lost so much weight, it's not helping, it's only hurting. Or when someone says to us, oh, you lost weight, you look so good. Yeah, because losing weight is looking good, especially when you've already thin as it is, and then you lose more weight. That's not good for someone like me who is already thin, and if I lose more weight, that's not certainly going to give me a good body image. I've struggled with it my entire life, let alone, being sick and losing weight, and then seeing your body change in ways you don't want it to. The next thing that a lot of people tell you would be, if you just ate or drank more, it would help you. Okay, so what happens when you're bloated? You can't really eat too much. You're in pain. I don't think you really want to eat too much when you're in pain, especially stomach pain. I've always said that after I got sick, my association and my love for food has certainly decreased a bit. Just because I kind of associate, like, me eating as, like, not knowing how it's going to affect my body. So, yeah, I have a little bit of anxiety about that. Next thing that you will run into in your life will be those know-it-all people that will sit there and tell you, oh, I found something online that will help you. And then they will proceed to act like they know what they're talking about. They've done their research, when in fact they're only speaking from what they think they know, but what not actually is. The next one that I really, really, really hate is when someone tells me that I need to be more positive. Now, that one really hits to the core because I've had people in my life say this over and over again to me, when in reality we need time to, so if we want to be negative, we should be able to be negative. That's just how life is. When we're sick and we don't feel like smiling and laughing every 5 seconds, when you're put in our shoes where you have chronic pain, and it's one of those things where, like, okay, maybe I'll feel better the next day or the next day, and with us it could be like, throughout the week we could feel like hell, and it's hard to be positive when you feel like hell. It's one of those things where, like, you're as positive as much as you can be, but you're also entitled to have those, like, rough negative days where you don't feel like talking to anyone, you just want to keep to yourself. The next one I wouldn't say is bad, but in the hindsight, it probably is, because people oftentimes, they'll tell you when you say, oh, I have Crohn's disease or ulcerative colitis, they'll tell you, oh, my aunt has it, my brother has it, my cousin has it, my sister has it. And then they will proceed. So that doesn't bother me, but then when they proceed to compare their family member's disease to yours, that's what bothers me, because every IBD patient has a different case. So you cannot sit there and compare one to the other. We're all different. We all go through different things. We're all on different medications. We all have different trigger foods. So please do not compare a patient that with IBD to another patient with IBD. That's not productive and not beneficial for the community, okay? Alright, so this one I used to get told when I was in the early stages of my disease, and pretty much they asked me if I was going to die, and I always try to think about it like this. So I remember I said this to one person. I was like, well, it's inevitable that all of us are going to die someday. So, I'm not going to die from my disease, like tomorrow. Do you know what I mean? So please don't associate a disease with death, because it's already a struggle going through it emotionally and mentally to deal with that as a young adult, to get diagnosed with that. So we don't want to even think about death in the near future, okay? We're trying to live our lives the best way that we can with the hands we've been dealt. Next one would be, is it contagious? So this happens a lot too. I've had this happen to me quite a bit, especially with people that are not educated about it. They sit there and that's the question that they ask, but they don't realize how hurtful that is. If I'm not saying it's contagious, it's not, obviously, but I'm just saying, when you ask that question, that's very hurtful to a patient because, then we feel like, okay, we can't even open up because you're automatically questioning, if you can get it when you can't, just for the record. The next one, which I've heard within the last 2 or 3 years, would be, you're in remission, so you're fine. Now, this is very inaccurate. My gastroenterologist always told me he didn't like the word remission. And, I never understood why until I used to get this comment. And then I always tell people, like, just because I'm in remission does not mean I'm immune to having bad days. I've struggled with fatigue since day one, okay? That's one of the first symptoms I realized when I was getting sick. And I've struggled with that for all the last 8.5 years I've had Crohn's. So, just because I don't have the other symptoms I normally have, doesn't mean that I'm okay, just means that, I have less symptoms and they're far and few between, not closer together as they were. This one is another one that really gets under my skin, is when someone tells you that you talk about your disease too much, where, so sometimes, like, I want to speak about my Crohn's disease with other people, and then they write it off as like you talk about it too much. And if you look at it, the rest of the world's not talking about Crohn's or ulcerative colitis a lot. The commercials out there, they're not accurate, they're not good for us. All they do is depict people running to the bathroom and shutting the door in different scenarios. It's not really conducive and it's not really explanatory to what we have to go through. So if I want to talk about it, let me talk about it. That's why a lot of times I've pulled back from speaking about it because of that comment. But you know what? I feel like I've done myself a disservice by not speaking about it. So that's another reason why I'm glad I'm making this video. Next thing that I've been told is, oh, my disease, whatever the disease is similar to mine. I hate when people try to compare something that's completely unrelated to Crohn's or ulcerative colitis. They're completely, if something's completely different than the other, please don't compare them. That's my thought process on that one. So this has been told to me, and people wouldn't believe it, but it has. When people tell me, like, it's your fault that you're sick, because sometimes, like, people look at it and see the lifestyle that you led before you got sick. So they kind of, like, judge you for it and be like, okay, well, you led to yourself getting sick. It's not like I'm going to go shopping for a disease and be like, okay, now what disease should I pick? I want one that I cannot cure. I want one that affects every aspect of my life. We don't shop for our disease. I didn't ask for this. I just got I just got it out of nowhere, and then I've kind of just had to deal with it. But in reality, I don't see it anymore as like a curse. I see it as a blessing because it taught me a lot about myself. So I'll go with that. The next one is man up and stop acting like a child. Now this one is just comical to me because a lot of times that's coming from a person that isn't going to go through what you've gone through. If someone had Crohn's disease and said that to me, that's kind of comical because, when we struggle, and we're complaining and we're, we don't want to feel like we can, make it through the day. We should be able to, get down on ourselves. Doesn't mean we're, quitting, or doesn't mean that we're weak. It just means that we're brave enough to say how we feel. And this next one kind of piggybacks off of the other one, where I'm basically saying, you know, when someone says to you, stop complaining about how sick you are. Now, this one is, you know, one of those things where it's like, okay, you know, please don't tell me what I can complain about, number one. Number two, if I want to complain about it, I should be able to. And number three, if you were in my shoes, you would see where I was coming from. Now, a lot of times you have that comment comes from a lot of healthy people, so they don't understand where you're coming from, and they don't understand why you complain. You know, it's like we have a right to complain. We're sick regularly, so you know, please don't take it as like, oh, we're making too much of something. You know, and this is another thing too. Is like we don't want to make it seem like it's all we are either. You know, I hate when you have the people that tell you, oh, well, you're so much more than your disease. I already know that. You know, I would just expect someone to be there for me, that's all. The next one is, I mean, again, I've been told this in college. People don't understand why I remained silent for so long, like, after I graduated from college, and it's because of all the things people have said to me during the first 2 years I was sick, when I, you know, had to tell other people. When someone said to me, Crohn's is not that bad, you just go to the restroom a lot. So that one, again, is a very misconception, because you're judging upon either what you see on TV or the commercials. Like I said, I hate the commercials, but that's not for this video. And, you know, they kind of like judge based upon what they hear or what they think they know. You know, no one does the research, they just make the judgment. So my advice to a lot of people that do not have Crohn's or colitis is to please do your research before you say something like that, or before you even think about something like that. The next one kind of scarred me because, you know, it has to do with, like, you know, your personal life. You know, I've never really gone on, you know, a date or whatever, but the one time I did, you know, or was going to, the person said to me, you keep canceling, so I finally stopped asking you out. Now, here and again, that's someone, again, that doesn't understand the disease, and that's understandable. I'm not going to ask you to understand it, but I would hope that you could sympathize with me in knowing that I'm not canceling because I want to cancel and I don't want to see you. It's because, you know, I don't feel well enough to see you. And I feel like when you meet the right person that will understand that, they will sit there and say to themselves, you know, oh, this person is actually being honest with me, and, you know, you have to take it, you know, give the person the benefit of the doubt is what I'm saying. Don't just write them off because they cancel 1 or 2 times, or maybe even 3, you know. Hear them out. And, you know, that's why a lot of times, like, in a way, I kind of want to tell people early on about my disease, because I feel like it's more of like a filter. So, you know, for those people that, you know, will sit there and only be around me for the good times. Like, if I'm sick, I'm sick. You know, if I cancel on you, you know, it's not because I don't want to be around you. Just know that, okay? It hurts me more than to cancel on you than it does for me to actually cancel on you, okay? Next one would be, you use your disease as an excuse. So a lot of times, like, you know, if you're, like, absent, again, on certain events, or, you know, you get invited somewhere you don't go, or something of that effect, you know, or, you know, you miss an assignment at school if you're in school, you know, or a party you're supposed to attend, you say you were going to attend, and then you back out the last second. You know, a lot of people don't understand that, you know, Crohn strikes, or ulcerative colitis, and the alternative strikes at any point in your lives. We don't have any control over it when it strikes, when we have those symptoms, and, you know, we cannot predict it, essentially. We're not fortune tellers. So basically, if I'm telling you I can go somewhere, and then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, I can't, don't make it seem like I'm using my disease as a deterrent from going to see you, okay? The next one is, okay, so this happened to me in the hospital when I first got sick. I remember it vividly because, you know, I've been sick for 8.5 years, but, you know, there's a certain thing that a nurse said to me that kind of stuck with me, and I honestly, it's one of those things where, like, you know, you're a nurse, you're supposed to be compassionate, and you're supposed to be mindful of what you're saying to your patients, and this particular one wasn't. I remember I had to drink barium for Crohn's patients and ulcerative colitis patients. I'm sure you know what that is. I had to drink 3 bottles in 20-minute intervals over the course of an hour. So I drank 2, you know, and I was like, I remember the second one I was like extremely bloated and I was in so much pain. but they told me you have to go all 3 bottles down. So then, when it was time for the 3rd bottle, they call me into like this, the room where they're going to give you the scan, and the nurse in there tells me, as I'm trying to get down the 3rd drink, is she decides to tell me that most patients usually upchuck by this point. Now, you have to understand, when you're emotionally and mentally vulnerable at that point, that's probably the last thing you want to hear, like as you're trying to keep disgusting liquid down and someone's telling you that you're going to throw up, or most people do throw up and it's okay if you do. Like, you don't even want that as part of your mindset. So I just think that, every Crohn's or ulcerative colitis patient has had a horror story like that, so, or probably worse than that, I'm sure. But I just think that, even people in the medical community need to be mindful of what they say to us, that's all. Next one would be, you look like you've lost weight. What diet are you doing? And then I always try to like make a joke or something, because I feel like if I'm making a joke, I'm making light of my unfortunate situation. So I usually will say like, well, I'm on the Crohn's diet. Haven't you heard of it before? Something to that effect. Because I don't want to, basically take in something like that and basically turn it around into a negative thing. If someone's going to comment about my weight, I have to answer something smart. That's just how I am. I don't like to sit there and allow people to, to speak about my weight over and over and over again, because, that's something I can't control. I've struggled so much with weight gain, or even like keeping a sustainable weight, It's just very difficult, and unless you have a disease that affects your weight, you won't understand how that affects you mentally and emotionally. It's not good for you. Next one I hear a lot is, I've gained weight, but people still say this to me. It's just unfathomable that it still happens. When someone will say to me, you really need to put on more weight because you look so unhealthy. Most people don't know this, but I've gained a total of, I would say, 40 pounds in the last 2 years. Now, you wouldn't know that by looking at me because I'm still tall and I still appear thin, but that is actually fact. But people will still say, you look unhealthy, you don't look well, you look pale, and you look this, you look that, because of your weight. They'll sit there and comment about how, you need to eat all these foods in order for you to feel better, when they're not doctors, they're not gastroenterologists, and they don't have a medical degree. But yet they're the one dishing out advice. Makes sense. This one kind of piggybacks off of the one before this, and it basically is saying, just change your diet and eat better. That's easier for someone to say that's healthy, because they don't understand what struggles we do have in terms of trigger foods, and, what food sets us off and what foods we have to stay away from. They don't understand. So I kind of just want to give a list of things that have been told to me throughout the last 8.5 years, in hopes that a Crohn's patient or ulcerative colitis patient can relate to what I'm saying here. If you have ones of your own, I encourage my fellow patients out there to make a video, tell me about it. I want to hear what you've been told throughout your life, and what sayings or what terms have stuck with you over this time. And I hope that everyone has a great World IBD Day, and thanks for watching.